Years ago, archaeologists discovered a site in Egypt that shook Jews and Christians alike. In the middle of an Egyptian temple, carved into a wall, they found an image that was eerily similar to the tabernacle described in the Torah. And suddenly, people began asking questions like, did the Jewish people design the tabernacle after a pagan temple? Does this prove that God did not command these things, and that we can no longer trust the words of the Old Testament? Or is there a simple explanation for all of this? Well, in our recent episode of the Beyond the Words podcast, we explored these questions and more. And so if you'd like to watch the full podcast, you can do so for free in our Beyond the Words community. Just go to www.brandonrobbinsministry.com/community. Otherwise, enjoy this part of the episode. When we imagine these stories, we're imagining Moses living really well in Pharaoh's palace and the Hebrew people just maintaining their Hebrew identity and their faith while suffering as slaves. But Scripture actually paints a pretty different picture. I mean, there's so many moments where God has to remind the Hebrew people that they are no longer Egyptians. I mean, think about what did they do when Moses doesn't come down from Mount Sinai fast enough? They immediately start worshiping other gods.
Right.
They go back to those old habits, this way of life that they've been exposed to for generations that's just ingrained inside of them. And God has to set them free and show them how not to do that. In fact, there's this really, really cool thing. I don't know if they'll depict this in the show, but it would be amazing. There's this archaeological evidence that is out there that highlights just how much that Egyptian identity was a part of the Hebrew people. And God actually uses it in really big ways. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
So there is this place in Egypt called Abu Simbel. And Abu Simbel is a temple that was created by the pharaoh Ramesses II. And Ramesses wanted a place that would honor him, a place that would be a sign of Egypt's power to everybody traveling along the Nile. And he wanted it to be a place that would honor him in a way that he felt he deserved and equate him with the gods. Well, inside of this temple at Abu Simbel, there's something really unique that Ramesses chose to use as a testament to his power and his deity. It's this mural of sorts that highlights a battle. And it looks like this. And what it is, it's a carving in the wall of the chamber depicting a very important battle from early on in Ramses' reign. In this battle, Ramses claimed to have defeated the Hittites and overcome overwhelming odds solely through his courage and his power. But what I want you to notice about this carving, though, is the layout and where Ramses is situated. Right? So let's look a little bit closer. If you see over here where we've got this circle, right here, Ramses is over here to the right, and he's situated in a tent. That's what this is, right? He's situated in this tented area. And there are these people out. So here's the tent, and then there's these people outside who are worshiping him. And then if you look a little bit closer, what you see is that inside, his presence inside of that tent is represented by this cartouche. It's kind of hard to see, but if you type in cartouche, and search for it, you'll kind of have an idea of what this image is that we're pointing to here. Then here's where things get even more interesting. Alongside him, right over here, are these winged creatures representing the god Horus. Right? These are images that Ramses would have used all over the place as propaganda. This whole thing would have been an image that he used as propaganda, highlighting how amazing he was, right? He considered this battle to be his defining moment. So he made sure that everybody knew what happened, who he was, and why they should worship him. And one group who would have been especially familiar with this image were the Hebrew people, right? I mean, for generations, they had been slaves. They'd been exposed to this. They'd seen it all over the place. And this is where things get really interesting. Because after God frees the Israelite people from slavery in Egypt, after God leads them through the Red Sea into Mount Sinai, God gives them a command to build a tabernacle. And so think about this, right? They just left Egypt.
Right.
Egypt is all they know. Pharaoh is all they know. Slavery is all they know. And so when God gives them the instructions for how to build a tabernacle, God draws upon what they know. And let me show you what I mean. So this is the design of the tabernacle that God tells them to build. And interestingly enough, it looks a whole lot like the layout of that wall carving.
Yep.
I mean, you see the tent here with the tent here. You see this people worshiping the god Horus and these cherubim over here. Here's a place of worship just outside. There's other things going on out here that match what's going on out here. I mean, it's crazy how similar these two are.
Wow.
Right? How this propaganda that they've been seeing for centuries, maybe even they went to these temples around Egypt that have been made to reflect this scene, the adornments upon the ark, all of it line up, right? And here's what this is highlighting. Here's why this is so important. This chest that contained the presence of God, it looks like this cartouche. It has this winged creature and all this other stuff. And what it shows us is that God is taking these images, these ideas that God's people have been exposed to for so long, and God is repurposing them. What God's doing is saying, you're used to seeing this and thinking this, but now every time you see it, you're going to think of me.
Wow.
So every time you would have been tempted to think of Ramesses and what kind of God he is, you're going to think of me. Every time you think about how people worshiped him, you're going to worship me. And it changes it, right? God says to them, you used to think these stories were true, but now I'm going to show you who the real God is, and I'm going to show you who you should truly worship.
That's amazing.
And so The Chosen has this really amazing opportunity to depict this in both the Egyptian portions of this series, but also hopefully when they depict the tabernacle, which I like to point out is the only dwelling place that God ever commands God's people to create.
Really?
God never actually gives them a command to build a temple, but God gives them very specific instructions for the tabernacle. So this is a big deal in the story of Moses, and something that I think is so often overlooked in other productions that would be really cool for The Chosen to cover.
Yes. This is my note to self. When we post our podcast in audio format only, I want to link those images that we just saw now so that people listening will be able to go to those links and see those images, because that is really powerful and something I have never seen before about how God was communicating to the Hebrew people in a way that they could understand and like kind of reshaping their thoughts. It was so cool.
It's so
I
cool.
love that.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning the tabernacle. I wanted to say that speaking of the tabernacle, we are actually going to see it in real life, August of 2025. We are hosting a trip to the Holy Land.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. We're going to the Holy Land. We will see the tabernacle. Cool. So there is this reconstruction of the tabernacle to scale in southern Israel.
Cool.
And what is amazing about it is when you go through it, it takes you through and they ask you, like, are you a Christian? And if you are, they will connect every piece of that tabernacle to Jesus. It is amazing. It was one of my favorite things I saw my first time to Israel. And so we're going to go down there. We're going to see it. Our girls are going to be with us.
Yes, they are. Our daughters are very excited. Our oldest has decided that she wants to be baptized in the Jordan River.
Yeah.
And that's so cool.
Well, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you'd like to watch the full podcast, you can do so for free in our Beyond the Words community. Just go to www.brandonrobbinsministry.com/community or click the link right here.